Hi, this is part two of our discussion of depth and variety in games. Model depth. The question here is the game a good model of whatever it is representing or depicting? Don't confuse looks, such as photorealism, with decisions. It's the decisions that count. Are the decisions you make in the game the same kind of decisions, same kinds of choices a person could make in that real situation? Do the things that happen in the game correspond with the things that happen in the situation being depicted? I call this analogousness or correspondence, since analogousness is a really ugly word. The more that decisions, choices, and occurrences correspond with the actual situation, the better the model depth. So, for example, first-person shooters are failed dismally as models. Nobody in a real-world situation like that runs around and jumps in order to avoid being shot and says, well, as long as I can kill two of them before they kill one of me, I'm fine. That has nothing to do with reality. World of Tanks has the trappings of model depth to attract war buffs, and it does have model depth in the firing of weapons and penetration and so on, although I strongly suspect that the tanks in the game are much more survivable than tanks in the real world. However, a lot of what you do in the game deviates immensely from reality. And the same can be said for World of Warships, for example. That doesn't mean they're not fun games. They're just not good models of war in the most important respects. Now contrast this, everything I've been talking about depth, with variety. Because when contemporary gamers talk about depth in a game, they often mean variety. They confuse depth and variety because they haven't played many games with real gameplay depth. There's a lot of decisions in a game with a lot of variety because there's a lot of variation. Surprise. But those decisions don't have the same qualities as in a game with a lot of depth, both in what you choose and in how it turns out. And you can have too many decisions, so individually they tend to cease to matter, even though there's a winner and a loser. And especially in single-player video games, you can get an awful lot of repetition without sufficient variety because there's no human opponent. So variety is very important to games. But it's not gameplay depth, it's something else. It's breadth, not depth. Variety provides more things to do, but the decisions and choices don't change their character. The decisions don't lead to deeper hidden decisions. The decisions aren't more important. They're less important. So you can play a spellcaster instead of a hack and slasher in a game, and you do things differently, but there's nothing deeper about it. It's breadth, not depth. In a loot fest like Diablo 3, you don't even have to stick with your decision. You can change when you like, for example, in skill allocations. Players like customizable characters, but I'm not sure that makes much difference to the outcome. And you can have too many decisions, too many for the players to keep track of. Too many so that each one individually doesn't really matter. And this is a reason for keeping games simple if you want a deep game rather than a broad game, so the decisions really matter. Now, ideally, you want to have both depth and variety in a game. But there are many players nowadays who don't want to think hard, they don't want to work to find the hidden decisions, and for them variety is quite sufficient. Now, I think that's much less true for strategic war game players than for gamers as a whole. I'm going to digress slightly because someone once suggested to me another kind of depth, which amounts to athletic depth. But that applies mainly to games that are athleticware rather than brainware, and in this course we're concerned with brainware. But you can think that there are decisions involved in the athleticism. If you look at American football, there's lots of decisions players have to make, and then they have to execute them properly. But that's athletic-ware, not brainware. Now, I have just scratched the surface here. I have written more than 6,000 words about depth in games, which I have to revise and extend. And these videos, 135 to 140 words a minute, 6,000 words would take about 45 minutes. But I've done enough for this course. I'm planning a separate advanced course just about depth in games. So, party games don't have much depth, but they may have breadth. Traditionally, hobby games had depth, but now they tend to have breadth, variety, or they have puzzle depth or story depth, not gameplay depth.